Coast. My name is Earl Folks, and I'm the chair of the Democratic National Committee's LGBT Caucus, and I welcome you to our meeting. I officially proclaim this meeting open, and I want to welcome you on behalf of myself, Evangeline Bleacher, our vice chair, and our secretary, Lawrence Zaxton, to the gayest political convention in history. We have 635 LGBTQ delegates, the most we've ever had. And we're gathered together virtually to nominate the most pro-LGBTQ plus equality ticket in the history of this great republic in Vice President Biden and Senator Harris. And we have an exciting meeting planned for you. And before I ask DNC member and convention delegate Dr. Richmond to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, I would ask that each of you will close your eyes for a moment and bow your heads in a moment of silence to remember the victims of transgender violence, not only in the United States, but around the world. Can we imagine a world where transphobia does not exist? Yes. Thank you very much. Dr. Richmond will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hello, everybody. If you don't have a flag, I have flags here right in front of me. Please place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Richmond. And you'll be hearing from Dr. Richmond and several of her colleagues later on this afternoon, I should say, as they have a very important workshop they will be working on for representing the transgender community. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing to you the junior senator from the state of Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin. Tammy Baldwin has served at every level of government, from the local city council to a state committee to the state legislature in Wisconsin, as a congresswoman and then senator. And she may be the junior senator from Wisconsin, but I can assure you she's a senior senator for the LGBTQ plus community. And it's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce to you the Honorable Senator Tammy Baldwin. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to start by providing everybody with a warm virtual welcome to the great state of Wisconsin, the city of Milwaukee. Obviously, this is not how we planned to convene, but what is so important is that we are all guided by a leader and a party that puts our public health and our individual health first. And so I'm just delighted to join the LGBTQ caucus of convention delegates and guests. And in that welcome to the state of Wisconsin for the convention, I also just want to do a little bit of bragging about my home state. Believe it or not, Wisconsin was the first state in the union to pass legislation protecting individuals on the basis of sexual orientation in matters of employment, education, public accommodations, and housing. And we were very proud of that distinction. It was back in 1982. And it was actually passed by both houses of the legislature and signed into law by a Republican governor. Who today can imagine that bipartisan cooperation, et cetera, as things have only gotten more polarized? So we are very proud of that historic first. It took some years for the next state to, in turn, pass legislation of this sort. But now I want to just bring us right forward to our current moment where recently the United States Supreme Court has declared that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act includes protections in employment for members of the LGBTQ community. That said, it's only limited to employment. And we need to provide those protections everywhere for housing, credit, for public accommodations, for education. And it is why, along with so many other participants in this phone call today, this virtual or this video call, we are working on passage of the Equality Act. Now, my leaders, my colleagues in the House who are leaders in the Equality Caucus have already had a success in passing it through that House. And I am so proud of their actions, but we have to pass the Equality Act through both houses. And of course, we have to have a president who will sign it into law. So I want to tell you a little bit about our mission during these 4 days, and then every single day beyond then until we get through November 3rd. Because we have on the ticket the most pro-equality leaders for president and vice president that we have ever had. I have wonderful memories of watching Joe Biden lead on these issues, of seeing him in the signing room as President Obama signed into law. I remember 3 landmark issues: the Matthew Shepard, James Byrd Hate Crimes Prevention Act, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and ultimately in the Affordable Care Act, the strongest anti-discrimination provisions we've ever seen made a part of our national health laws. And Joe Biden, he whispered into Obama's ear, "This is a big F deal," BFD. We all remember that. It was a hot mic, but it was. All of these strides towards equality were major strides. And we all, I think, also recall that in 2012, in an interview on television nationally, Joe Biden expressed his strong support for marriage equality. And that began a change and transformation that was unquestionably one of the key moments in moving towards full marriage equality. So we have a ticket, and I haven't even talked about Kamala Harris, but I know some of the other speakers are going to do that. She is a friend and a colleague. She has executive experience as the Attorney General of California. She's been an incredible colleague in the Senate. And I will give one more Wisconsin anecdote. When I was running for re-election in 2018, Kamala Harris visited the state to help on my campaign, and we were able to attend the Pride Festival at Summerfest grounds together. And we had such a good time, but she is such a solid ally and supporter. So we know what our job is. We know exactly what our job is. We can get out there and fight every single day during this convention and onward. We cannot afford for anyone in our community or our allies to stay home. And we are the ones who will deliver this. So thank you all for participating, and have a great second day of the convention. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Baldwin, for those words. You continue to be a leader in our community and inspire so many young people to do great things in politics. My next pleasure I have is to introduce to you the Honorable Representative Mark Pocan from the 2nd District of Wisconsin. He served 14 years in the State Assembly before moving on to Congress in 2012, and he continues to be a voice for progressive issues throughout the nation and his district. And we welcome you, Representative Pocan. One day.
Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction. And, we are so happy we have Tammy Baldwin as our U.S. Senator from Wisconsin. So we're already very ecstatic with who we've got there. And really, Tammy has just been such an amazing member of Congress and the Senate. And last election 2 years ago, she won by 11 points in a purple state. All of our other state constitutional officers won by 1 point. And it was Tammy's coattails that actually brought us a governor, an attorney general, a lieutenant governor, and other statewide constitutional officers. So ecstatic about that. I'm proud to be a out member of Congress, co-chair of the Equality Caucus. And I've actually been out in elected office since 1991. I served on the Dane County Board of Supervisors, local government. I served with someone who you might know. What was her name again? Tammy Baldwin. Tammy and I were on the county board together, and it has been a great experience. In fact, interesting fact, in Wisconsin in the early 90s, there were more out elected officials from Dane County, Madison, Wisconsin area than the entire state of California. So we have this long tradition we're very proud of in Wisconsin. And again, just so happy to represent this area. Also, Wisconsin, I don't know if Tammy mentioned this, but we were the first state in the nation to have a gay and lesbian rights bill in 1982. We didn't have transgender included yet at the time, but it was a gay and lesbian civil rights bill. And it took another 7 years for another state to have that. So again, something we're really proud of about Wisconsin. There's just a lot at stake coming up with this election. The Trump administration has been anti-equality at every turn, from military service to right to discrimination laws. This president has not been a friend of the LGBT community, which always makes me wonder why the log cabin Republicans continue to support Donald Trump. But I guess I should assume any group that has their name date back to log cabins, that's probably their political relevancy too. I'm not going to worry too much about that. But for everyone else in the LGBT community, we know who our friends are and who our friends aren't. And we know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are great friends, the most pro-equality ticket I think we've ever had. And the reason I say that is I just want to remind everyone, Joe Biden was the first person to support marriage equality back in 2012 on Meet the Press. This is before even Barack Obama. So Joe Biden has been there for our community. In fact, I forgot 1 year at a holiday party while Barack Obama was president, Joe Biden was there because Barack Obama was gone. And my husband and I took a picture with Joe Biden and his wife. And I forgot what my husband said to him. And all of a sudden he said, "Yeah, you guys got to go get him." And just, everything about his attitude has been extremely positive for the LGBT community. And we'll have that in a president. We also have that in the running mate. Kamala Harris has been amazing in her record as a U.S. Senator and as an Attorney General for the LGBT community. So I'm very happy to have those folks as our ticket, and really important that the legislation that we can pass with a presidency, a Joe Biden presidency, is enormous. The Equality Act, we passed that in the House with a slight bipartisan vote, but was a bipartisan vote. But basically, it would make sure that the majority of states that don't currently have protections for their LGBT citizens in things like employment and housing will have that through the Equality Act. This would take care of everything pretty much that's out there that wasn't covered by marriage equality, and you don't have those rights in a majority of states in this country. So you can get married on a Saturday, post your pictures on Facebook on a Sunday, and lose your job on Monday in a majority of states in this country. That bill will pass early in a Biden administration. Also, military service, making sure that everyone has that ability to serve, and he'll support inclusivity at all levels in his administration. I think the last thing I just want to say that's so important is about voting. Donald Trump has done his best to create chaos about voting and what is happening with the post office. That's the whole goal, is to make it so you think your vote may not count. Tell you what, we can defeat Donald Trump in 2 ways this year. One, request your ballot now if you haven't already. When you get that ballot, vote early, not often, but early, and get it done. Mail it 6 weeks out when you get that ballot. If you don't trust the Postal Service because of Donald Trump, then drop it off at your city, village, or town hall, or they may have drop boxes set up in your community. We can defeat his effort to create chaos, and then we'll defeat him again when they count votes on November 3rd. That's how we defeat Donald Trump twice. I just want to say again, thank you so much for being a part of the DNC convention. I am so glad to be here with you all. And I can't wait for November 3rd. And we're going to turn the page and have pro-equality laws and a president and vice president once again. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Representative Pocan, and thank you for being a progressive voice in the House. Next, I'm going to introduce a person who is my friend, who is from the great state of Wisconsin. You notice the theme at the beginning of this caucus meeting is focused on Wisconsin, because we're in Milwaukee in spirit. So we want to reflect those Milwaukee values and the fun we would have had if we were all together. But I want to introduce Jason Ray, who's the secretary of the Democratic National Committee. Jason was elected to represent his state party in the DNC when he was 17 years old, was reelected twice, and in 2017 was elected as the youngest secretary to our national party and the first one of our LGBTQ community. And I have to say, as a member of the DNC, he has taken the secretary's office and made it efficient, made it responsive, and we're glad to have Jason there and leading in our community. So thank you, Jason Ray, and please give us your remarks.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Earl, for your leadership of the LGBTQ caucus and for your friendship. You've been a true mentor to me. Greetings, everyone from Milwaukee. As a Wisconsinite and someone who lives here in Milwaukee County, I just want to start by welcoming all of our LGBTQ delegates, alternate standing committee members, and other convention participants who are joining us today. We have people joining from across the world, so we're excited to have you as a part of this. And while I really wish I could have welcomed you all here in Milwaukee and got to experience the city that I love, I'm really proud to be a part of a party that really believes in science and puts people's health and safety front and center. But I hope at some point in the future I'll be able to bring you to Milwaukee to show you the world. As Earl said, my name is Jason Ray, and I'm honored to serve as the Secretary for the Democratic National Committee and the Secretary for the Democratic National Convention, and to be the first openly LGBTQ individual to serve in these roles. I hope that you all enjoyed last night as much as I did. While it was certainly an unconventional convention, I think it really highlighted what's at stake for us in the LGBTQ community, and the stakes can't be higher. You know, Donald Trump and Mike Pence have really given hate against LGBTQ plus individuals safe harbor and have rolled back critical protections for our community. And I think that's why it's so important that we need to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They believe that every human being should be treated with respect and dignity and be able to live without fear, no matter who they are or who they love. Now, tonight at the convention, I'm really excited to help direct our reimagined roll call, which is going to take convention viewers across all 57 states and territories. And over the course of 30 minutes, you're going to meet people who are, overcoming the chaos and crises of Donald Trump and are fighting for a better America each and every day. You're going to hear from delegates, parents, teachers, small business owners, and other activists who are really going to share their story as we officially nominate Donald Trump to become the next president of the United States. But certainly our work can't stop there or stop when this convention ends. Between now and November, we need each and every one of you to help be a part of this movement and make sure that we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Together, as a community, we can make sure that we elect leaders who believe LGBTQ rights are civil rights. Thank you again so much for being a part of this unconventional convention and for all the work that you are all going to do between now and Election Day. I can't wait for the opportunity to welcome you here to Milwaukee in the future and show you how inclusive and open our city is. But until then, I look forward to seeing you online and hope to see all of you again soon. Thanks so much, Chair Folks. Appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Hi, everyone. This is Van Beechler, chair of the Idaho Democratic Party, coming to you from Boise, Idaho. I'm also vice chair of the DNC's LGBT Caucus, and I'm excited to be here with you all today. This morning, I'm going to be introducing Representative Sean Patrick Maloney from the U.S. House of Representatives in New York. Representative Sean Patrick Maloney currently represents New York's 18th District in the U.S. House of Representatives and was first elected in November 2012. His top priorities include national security, protecting our drinking water, ensuring our veterans get the benefits they've earned, and combating the heroin and opioid epidemic. Representative Maloney currently serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and the House of Agriculture Committee. Please welcome Representative Sean Patrick Maloney to our caucus today.
Well, hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. It's Congressman Maloney. It's so great to be with you, even if it's virtual. I'm so excited about the first night of the convention. I hope all of you were as moved and as motivated as I was. I want to give you 4 quick dates. The first one is 2013. It's my first year in Congress, and I'm at the lunch counter in the cloakroom, and it's the first time I'm having an in-depth conversation with John Lewis. And it's right after the Shelby decision came down from the Supreme Court, I believe in June of that year. And of course, as you know, it struck down a critical part of the Voting Rights Act. And John Lewis was telling me, in his own words, about marching over the Edmund Pettus Bridge in 1965. And he said, and I'll never forget it, he said, I stood next to LBJ in the Oval Office when he signed the Voting Rights Act in August, a few months later. And if you told me that 48 years later, we'd still be fighting for our rights, I wouldn't have believed it. And he said, so it's going to be up to younger brothers like you to carry on the fight. That's the first day. The second day was in April 2015, because I knew after I met John Lewis that I wanted to take my 2 African-American daughters and my husband to Selma for the 50th anniversary. Because you know that we have bridges left to cross for our own rights. When I joined Congress, it was illegal to have health insurance for my family under federal law. We couldn't get married, and so many other things that have now seen Democrats. Biden took the lead, and we're fighting for it. And so I stood at this bridge with my interracial family, with my husband, and we celebrated the 50th anniversary of these historic actions. The next date I wanted you to focus on is May of 2016. That's when I was able to fight back an anti-LGBT amendment on the floor of the House of Representatives. And even though it was still controlled by the Republicans, we were able to garner enough votes to stop something called the Russell Amendment, which would have deprived healthcare for transgender members of the military. And we won that vote, but then the Republicans twisted arms and stopped the clock and got shady and changed the votes back. And I spoke on the floor, and I was passionate about it, and I was angry. And when I was done, it was Representative Lewis who came over to me, and he grabbed me by the arm, and he said, keep fighting, little brother. And that brings me to the last date, which was June of 2016, just a month after he gave me those words of encouragement, when it was John Lewis who decided in the moment, to sit down on the House floor following the Pulse nightclub shooting. He was one of the first and most passionate defenders of our community in the wake of that horrible tragedy. Little known fact, The first member of the House not named John Lewis to sit down next to him was David Cicilline, our own co-chair of the LGBT Equality Caucus. And a bunch of us sat in on the House floor to fight for gun safety. And so I tell you those stories because we have so much work to do. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to help us cross those bridges that we have left to cross for our community. You've heard about the plan for our community. It's bold, it's ambitious, it's from the heart. And so I'm so excited to support this ticket. I hope you are. And in the spirit of John Lewis and those other pioneers for civil rights, we should remember the intersectional obligations we have. We should remember our transgender people of color who are too often exposed to violence. We should remember that we are part of a larger fight for social justice, which is why we say Black Lives Matter, which is why I was proud to bring my daughters during Pride Month to the BLM protests in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. We are connected to something bigger, and it is that feeling of responsibility for one another and the hope for what can be best in our country that makes me tell you with all my heart, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can bring us back and forward at the same time, back to a country that believed in our future and in one another, that knew we were only as strongest as our weakest links, that all of us are not free until while there are still people oppressed. And it will bring us forward for new victories and new opportunities that we can even imagine today. That's been the experience of our community in the short time that I've been in public life, to see our progress and our rights enshrined and adopted, not just in law, but by the larger community of our countrymen. We've built allies and a coalition, and we know with confidence that we're never going back. And we need to bring those same lessons, that same energy to all the other struggles for social justice that are occurring now in our country. And we can do that with the leadership of Vice President Biden and Senator Kamala Harris. So thank you for your energy and your enthusiasm. Thank you for participating in this virtual way. And let's work like heck to get this ticket elected every day from now until November so we can all move forward together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Representative Maloney. We appreciate you being here. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you again for being here. Up next, we have Mayor Lori Lightfoot from Chicago. Mayor Lightfoot came to the City Hall following a career as a manager, advocate, and reform expert with extensive experience working at city and federal level to make the government more accountable and accessible. Before taking office, she served as a senior equity partner in the litigation and conflict resolution group at Meyer Brown LLP. While at Meyer Brown, Mayor Lightfoot took on two critical tasks for the city of Chicago, chairing the Police Accountability Task Force and serving as president of the Chicago Police Board. Mayor Lightfoot held other key positions in city government as the interim first deputy of the Chicago Department of Procurement Services and chief of staff and general counsel of the Chicago Office of Emergency Management and Communications. Thank you so much for being here today, Mayor Lightfoot. Handing it over to you.
Thank you, Van, for welcoming me today. I am proud to serve as the first openly gay and first Black woman mayor of the great city of Chicago, and I'm proud to be here with you today. This is a remarkable moment in our country's history. I can't imagine that 20 years ago, we would have scores of out people all over the country elected to every public office in the land. I attended my first Pride event in the 1990s in New York City. I had been focused on my own coming out journey and really wasn't thinking then about a larger community. And then when I was in the streets of New York, I had that moment when you realize the power and joy of feeling like you're part of something bigger than yourself. I found myself surrounded by mostly gay men chanting, "How many more have to die?" Now, of course, this was at the height of the AIDS epidemic, and it was devastating people in our community all across the country. But that moment, seeing the level of activism, but also the pain of a community that was being hard hit by that pandemic, made me think about something beyond myself. And I've never looked back. It was a lightning bolt moment for me. And those organizers like the late, great Larry Kramer, who passed away just a couple of months ago, who refused to take no for an answer, who were furious, unashamed, and persistent in calling for funding, the research, the care, the drugs, the insurance, and the attention to this incredible crisis. They refused to accept anything less, and they demanded joy too. These folks woke me up, and that Pride Parade changed my life. It made me believe I could live my true, authentic self. And today, I am married to my wife, Amy, and we are raising our beautiful daughter. I ran for mayor to turn around the fortunes of people who had been locked out and left behind. I ran against a moneyed incumbent who then dropped out and the floodgates opened, and there were 14 of us that made it to the ballot. But I won in part because of the path blazed by our great heroes in our community all over the country who refused to take no for an answer. When I reflect on this history, I realize how the LGBTQ plus movement propelled me, gave me faith and inspiration and fire. I know that Pete and Tammy and so many in this virtual room have had their own lightning bolt moments because of the sacrifices and the hard work of so many. And it's amazing that we have come so far. But of course, we can't rest. We can't become complacent. We still have to be vigilant against discrimination, against hate, and against anti-LGBTQ violence. You all know these stories. In 2009, 27 documented murders against trans people. And so far in 2020, at least 26. And the year is far from over. We have to reach out to our people, generate more programs to aid those who are suffering from the impact of COVID-19 and ensure and its ensuing joblessness and loss of healthcare. And we have to keep fighting so that our young people have the support that they need to lead their own authentic lives. We in the LGBTQ plus movement have learned to fight for our rights. We've learned to fight like hell and to organize. We've learned to lead, and we have learned to care for one another. We have learned in the fire of an epidemic, and we built organizations to fight for us. I've had so many mentors and lots of help along my journey. And I had one special mentor who encouraged me to run for mayor, and it was known to some of you, and that's my friend, Michael Bauer. Mike was an advisor, an ace fundraiser, and a brilliant strategist. He became a beloved friend, and sadly, he passed away shortly after I was elected. It was like he stuck around long enough to see it happen. I know he'd be urging us today, go out there and beat Trump. Let's get Joe and Kamala into the White House and start repairing the damage and building anew. I hear Michael's voice every single day. So now we've got to intensify our efforts, protect our young people, support our social services that enable us to survive and to thrive. We build cultural organizations. Who's better than we are? Theater companies, dance troupes, choirs, and choruses. And the last frontier, we have even professional athletes who are out and proud. But what's stunning to me is the quantity and quality of political leaders. Van Beechler, leading the Democrats in Idaho, a lesbian mom and wife, in a place you'd really never think about us being out and proud, but also importantly in leadership. Part of a larger revolution that's happening all over the country, not just in urban spaces. So our task is clear. We've got to keep fighting on. We've got to make sure that we do everything we can to get Joe and Kamala over the threshold. And it's my great pleasure to be part of this larger community, roll up our sleeves, and fight towards victory. Onward, folks. We've got work to do.
Good day, Democrats. I'm Lawrence Saxon, the Secretary of the LGBT Caucus of the DNC and one of California's 20 elected members of the Democratic National Committee. I'm very happy to join you today and to have the opportunity to participate in this very important virtual event. I am a proud union lawyer, proud to be out. I've been out since I was the co-president of the Gay Law Students Association at the same UC campus that our next vice president, Kamala Harris, went to law school. Our next speaker is Congressman Mark Decano. In 2012, Mark became the first openly gay person of color to be elected to Congress. Mark represents the people of the greater Riverside area and serves as chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. I've known Mark since he was a teacher and community college district trustee, and I'm very, very proud of his accomplishments, and I'm proud to call him my friend. With no further ado, Congressman Mark Decano.
Thank you, Lawrence. Zaxon, so good to see you again. I just want to make sure everyone hears that because I don't know how I sync, but Lawrence, Zaxon, we have been friends since I was a teacher and on the community college board. And, my deep love and affection to both you and Peter, and for the work you do in labor law. I don't know if Peter is still on the water board, but tremendous public servants yourself. So let me just say what an incredible honor it is to represent the state of California as the first openly gay person in Congress, but also the first openly gay person of color in Congress. And it's so fitting that I follow Mayor Lightfoot in her great accomplishment. And I'm seeing so many persons of color who are also LGBT. Get prepared, hold on to your seats. I predict that we are going to have, again, every year that I've been a member of Congress since I was elected in 2012, we have elected the gayest Congress in history. So in 2012, I was able to say that. In 2014, I was able to say that. 2016, I was able to say that. And 2018, I was able to say that. And in 2020, I predict I'm going to be able to say that again, that we have the gayest Congress in history that we know of, because there's always somebody who is hiding someplace and comes out. But I also predict, not only predict, we already know that we now have an even more diverse LGBT caucus in the Congress with the election of Mondaire Jones of the great state of New York and Richie Torres, both openly gay men that identify as African American. Richie Torres is actually even a bigger intersection of Afro-Puerto Rican. Huge accomplishment. I have to give a lot of props out to the work of Equality PAC, which is the political arm of the Equality Caucus. So we have Equality Caucus, which is the official arm, Equality PAC, which is co-chaired by myself and David Cicilline. And we were in early in those races in New York. And with all modesty, and I won't claim things unless we really can claim them, I believe we had a huge impact on those races in New York. We are looking forward to electing the first Filipina lesbian to Congress, the first woman from the state of Texas who is also LGBT, Gina Ortiz-Jones. Equality PAC had a lot to do with providing a foundation for her early candidacy. She is in a strong position, but keep an eye out on her delegates and Democrats. She is a rising star. We are fully in with John Hoadley, who of Michigan. We have a chance to elect an LGBT member of Congress from the state of Michigan, and John Hoadley is in a great position to do that. Finally, I want to mention another candidate from my own home state of California. I hope to be joined by another person of color, the first lesbian person of color elected from the state of California. She's endorsed by the California Democratic Party, and that's Georgette Gomez. She deserves to be the representative from San Diego. She was elected unanimously on a bipartisan basis to be the president of the San Diego City Council. Part of that was a community organizer. Every other Democrat that could have run in the primary bowed out and said Georgette should be the nominee, including the assembly member, the county supervisor. Georgette has tremendous respect among her own peers of elected officials. Let me just say, I see my time's running out, but I want to get this in. President Trump tried to divide, did divide many of us when he tried to say that he would be good for LGBT people. He said on the first day he said near the first day of his term that he considered LGBT marriage equality to be settled law, but then went hard against women reproductive rights and played the far right religious right in our country. Well, I have to tell you that we have to stand together, not be divided, because he has turned against the LGBT community in a hard way. He wants to discriminate against gay couples, LGBT couples in adoption. He wants to allow medical practitioners to be able to discriminate, to decide who they're going to treat or not treat. And he issued one of these rules, even as the Supreme Court of the United States approved a landmark case 7-2 for LGBT rights, for LGBT workplace rights. This administration, make no mistake, is dangerous and an enemy of our community. I thought I was going to go a little longer, but should I stop now and move? Okay, I'm going to yield time to the next speaker. Lawrence, good to see you. Biden, Harris, go.
Thank you, Congressman Decano. It's great to see you again. Our next speaker is Congressman David Cicilline of Rhode Island, who represents the 1st Congressional District in the House. Congressman Cicilline is a member of the House Democratic Leadership. As chair of the Democratic Policy Communications Committee, he's also a co-chair of the LGBT Equality Caucus and vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Congressman, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence. It's wonderful to be with all of you and to say hello to the LGBTQ plus caucus. We are thrilled to be able to elect the most pro-equality candidate in the history of our country, someone who has a long record of fighting for the LGBTQ community. If you think about the progress that was made during the Obama-Biden years, real progress in our community, repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the Vice President's famous declaration of support for marriage equality on Meet the Press in 2012, and the unprecedented advancements in the protections of LGBTQ people in various walks of life at the federal level. All of that is under threat by the Trump administration that have rolled back protections for our community, have made it impossible for people to serve openly in the military, have attacked the transgender community, have made it difficult for agencies to provide adoption services to members of the LGBTQ community, and have rolled back important protections in education for LGBTQ students, particularly transgender students. So all of the progress that we have made is really at risk with 4 more years of the Trump-Pence administration. And we have in Joe Biden a real champion for our community, someone who has a long record of fighting for equality, someone who was an early supporter of the Equality Act, which I was proud to author in the House, which passed with the support of every single Democrat and is sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk, languishing like so much legislation that we've passed. And importantly, this is legislation which will make it illegal in this country as a matter of federal law to discriminate against someone based on sexual orientation or gender identity in employment, housing, public accommodations, jury service, credit, education, and federal funding. A fully inclusive, bold civil rights law that will achieve full equality for our community once and for all. Joe Biden will sign the Equality Act with the Democratic House and the Democratic Senate. And with Joe Biden as our president, it will become the law of the land. And so this is an important election for our country. It is not an understatement to say our very democracy depends on it. But our community has a special interest in this because we can elect a president and a vice president who have a long record committed to full equality for our community. And we're fighting against a president who has in every way undermined our efforts at full equality. And the reason we know it can make a difference is there are 11 million eligible LGBTQ plus voters across our country and 57 million pro-equality voters. So if we ensure that every single member of our community who's eligible to vote, votes and votes for their own equality, votes for ensuring that they will live in a country that will once and for all prohibit discrimination against them because of who they are by making the Equality Act the law of the land, we can make a difference in this election. We can make sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are elected as president and vice president of our country. I serve on the Judiciary Committee and on the Foreign Affairs Committee. And I can tell you that this president and his administration, as you all know, have attempted to shred and undermine institutions in this country that have made us the envy of the world, the rule of law, an independent judiciary, a free press, and of course, the founding values of equality and justice for all. That's why so much is at stake in this election. That's why it's important that we do everything we possibly can, everything humanly possible, to make certain that Joe Biden is elected our next president and Kamala Harris as our next vice president. And in that way, they will move forward our country in a way that represents our values, that gives meaning to our leadership around the world, that will restore the confidence that people have that this is a country that they should follow and emulate. And most importantly for our community, we will have people in leadership positions that will ensure that once and for all, we are protected under federal law and receive full equality like everyone else in this country. So thank you all for the work that you're doing. Thank you for the work that you will do. Happy to be with you today as we all march together to be sure that we have a great victory in November, a new president and a new vice president. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Our next speaker I'm privileged to introduce and welcome today is State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta of Pennsylvania. Representative Kenyatta was first elected to serve in the Pennsylvania General Assembly in 2018 as the first openly LGBTQ person of color in the Pennsylvania General Assembly in history. Representative Kenyatta is deeply committed to creating equitable and inclusive policies. Representative Kenyatta, I'm so happy to welcome you here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lawrence, and thank you to our great chair, Earl. Thank you for all you do and all you have done. You know, I know I'm preaching a bit to the choir here with my remarks, but as my pastor would say, the choir needs practice too. This is the most critical election in our lifetime. You've heard it repeated over and over again because it could not be more true. Everything America says about ourselves, this idea of freedom and justice and equality under the law, so many of these notions were ratified and written right here in Philadelphia on a hot summer, much like this one. But our challenge is that we have never fully lived up. We've never fully lived up to that promise of America. That's why when Joe Biden launched his campaign on the Parkway here in Philadelphia, he talked about this idea of fighting for the soul of the nation. And I know some folks said, oh, well, that sounds a little cheesy, but it is deadly serious. Who are we going to be? And that's what this election is going to determine. Donald Trump campaigned saying that he was an advocate for the LGBTQ community. He campaigned by saying he's going to be the most pro-equality president we've ever seen. But Donald Trump, as we know, has a history of lying, has a history of being a con. And look at his record. One of the first things he did was trying to completely erase any record, so he couldn't find hide nor hair of LGBTQ folks on the websites. He has, as Congressman Cicilline just talked about in some detail, not been an active supporter of, but has been an active opponent of passing the Equality Act. Donald Trump has made it impossible for our trans and non-binary service members who want to serve honorably in our armed services to do so. That's not the mark of a pro-equality president. This election and the difference between the two candidates, somebody like Joe Biden, who has stood up and stood with our community for years and years, and in his running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, who had also stood shoulder to shoulder with our community. Juxtaposed to somebody like Donald Trump, who is dangerously dumb. We are sitting here right now on a Zoom call instead of all being together in Milwaukee because of his complete inability to manage this crisis, his complete and utter lack of competence. And not only does he not know anything, but he gets rid of anybody around him who actually knows something. That is not the mark of the type of leader that we need moving forward. I'll end with this note about the type of person Joe Biden is. Joe Biden is somebody who listens as well as leads. And I think that ability for a leader to listen has been something we have completely underrated as we go through the process of choosing chief executives, of choosing elected officials at all levels of government. A lot of times we look for people who talk a lot and say they have a lot of big ideas, but his ability to listen is key. My worst day since I've been elected to the state house here was getting a call that a young kid named Little Phil had died by suicide in my district. I introduced a bill called Phillips Law, actually with a Republican member, to completely change the way we do mental health service, the way we provide mental health services to our young people in school. I talked to Vice President Biden about this in New Hampshire. When the Vice President rolled out his LGBTQ plan, Phillips Law was front and center as one of the things he wanted to use as a national model. That's why leadership matters. That's why listening matters. That's why what you all are doing right now matters. I am just deeply grateful for this opportunity, deeply grateful for the LGBTQ folks who are stepping up, running for office, who are getting engaged like never before. If we vote, and if we vote like we've lost our minds, not only will we beat Donald Trump, but we will beat him in historic fashion. And I'm looking forward to doing that on November 3rd. Thank you all so much.
Representative Kenyatta, I want to thank you for the services that you provide in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You don't know this, but my first house when I was a little boy, my family lived in your district. And so we're grateful. It's hard to believe that how history has brought us to this point, but you represent your district well. I have many friends who live in your district, and you do us honor. Thank you. I have the honor and the pleasure of introducing two people actually, a team who represented our community so well during the primary season, which was a very long season, a very difficult road to travel. And Mayor Pete and Chasten Buttigieg, I stood from a distance and I said, can these people, how would they look in the White House? How would they handle their responsibilities as the first gentleman and the first LGBTQ president? How would they fit into the White House? And I think many people, when Obama were running for office, also had the same thought. What would it be like to have a Black president and a Black first lady in the White House? How would they fit? And the more I saw Mayor Pete, and the more I heard and saw his husband, I kept saying to him, my God, they could win. They would be honorable. They would bring dignity and respect back to the White House and back to our form of government. And Mayor Pete, you have raised the bar so high for our elected officials. You have given so many young LGBTQ people, and maybe not so young LGBTQ people, the hope that they too could be president of the United States. And you're a young man, and you too, I wouldn't doubt that down the road that you would be the president of the United States. And First Gentleman Chasten would bring dignity and honor and respect to the position. And I think that you would make us proud, and you have made us proud, and you will continue to make us proud by your accomplishments. And I'm honored and pleased to be able to introduce you and to present you to our LGBTQ caucus today. Thank you very much for all you've done and the sacrifices you've made on behalf of this country and this community. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Chairman Folks. Thanks for your leadership and everything that you have done and everyone on this call has done for the causes and the candidates that we believe in. This is an extraordinary moment in the life of our country. And while it can feel like a dark moment, I think often it's the story of the LGBTQ community and our incomplete but ongoing struggle for equality that is an example of the hope and the potential of what leadership can do. You know, tonight's theme at the convention is leadership matters. And part of that is the leadership of Joe Biden. It's easy to forget because of the pace of change that he was stepping out ahead even of our Democratic Party when he said that marriage equality ought to be the law of the land. And it's one of the reasons why when we are gathering to support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, as well as our fantastic Democrats up and down the ticket, this is not just about what we're up against. We know what is at stake in defeating Donald Trump and Mike Pence, who I could tell you all kinds of things about, having gotten to know him all too well during his time as governor of Indiana. But it's not just that. Yes, what we are up against ought to be motivation enough. This is also about what we're for. It's about a chance to be for a leader who is driven by empathy, somebody who understands the need to make this a country where everybody can belong. And that path is one that has certainly shaped and changed my life. If you trace a line all the way back to Stonewall, when people led largely by Black trans women stood up in the face of police violence, all the way through to when a candidacy like mine, Chasten and me together campaigning across the country, something that would have been considered laughable, not just 51 years ago, but probably 5 years ago, and wound up having the chance to be the first openly gay candidate to win a presidential nominating contest, shows you the progress that's possible. But there are two things that we know, right? One, that progress is incomplete. We have an epidemic of violence against Black trans women. We still need a federal Equality Act. We see administrative actions on everything from health to international adoptions that are aimed squarely at tearing down the potential for equality for the LGBTQ plus community. So we know the progress is incomplete. The other thing we know is that progress is not permanent. And that's something we're being reminded of in our need to be allies to everyone raising voices to insist that this country live up to the truth that Black lives matter. All of the areas in American life where it has often been 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. These are the kinds of things that are at stake right now. It would actually take another 22,000 elected officials for there to be true proportional representation of our LGBTQ community in offices across the country. But we have amazing elected officials right now, amazing candidates. Honored to come on right after Representative Kenyatta, just one of so many of a new generation too. I can't believe I'm old enough to say this, but a newer generation coming up who represent such amazing potential and such amazing leadership today. And we're not going to get caught treating the presidency like the only office that matters. We know that not only do we have to elect Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, president and vice president, in order to get this country on the right track and secure equality and rights for our community, but also that so many of these decisions, so much of this power lies at the state level, at the school board level, even in mayor's offices that we know as Democrats we need to organize for in the reddest of red and the bluest of blue states. And the LGBTQ caucus of the DNC has been on the forefront of that. And I'm standing on the shoulders of the work that so many of you have done. Chasten and I got to know so many of you on the campaign trail, getting to travel the country and see what's at stake from people our parents' age to people not yet old enough to vote. I know, Chasten, that's a big part of your experience of the campaign too. And I know everybody's really excited to see you.
I'm so glad you brought up school boards because one one of the things I enjoyed the most out on the campaign trail was talking with young people. And in many places, young people feel like politicians and the government just does not care about them. I remember when I was growing up in northern Michigan, a very conservative place and time where it was simply a fact that you just could not be out. That's why I ended up running away from home. And then, fast forward, falling in love with you and getting to do this remarkable thing of traveling the country, representing your husband who's running for president. I'd sit with these young people and they would just talk about how they felt disenfranchised and left out, that nobody believed in them, that it was still unsafe to be their truest, most authentic selves. And I think, of course they deserved a president and a first gentleman, a secretary of education who actually believed in protecting trans and queer kids. But what many kids also need is an empathetic school board member. So if you're thinking about trying to make change in your own community, it doesn't just have to come from Washington. They also need to look up to people in their own community and know that people there in their hometown care about them and see them and see their true dignity and worth. So I, as a teacher, am always thinking about what young people are hearing, what young people are seeing in this country. I always think about this gentleman who I heard about in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when I was sitting at a round table in Tulsa talking about the state of the LGBTQ community there. And I learned a story of a young man who was kicked out of his home in the middle of the night and literally walked barefoot into downtown Tulsa, slept outside of the Equality Center because that's the only place where he felt safe enough to go. And I think a lot of times the conversation about progress in this community can be sort of torn apart. And we think that we've really pushed the needle and we've really gone far in many ways. But for him in Tulsa, what he needed was one safe place to sleep. That's why we're still talking about fighting to end this homeless epidemic. 40% of youth sleeping out on the street tonight identify as LGBTQ+. And that is why we're all in this fight together. That yes, we need to restore the soul of this nation to the White House, that every queer kid in this country should look up to the White House and see a president, a first gentleman, a vice president and a second gentleman first lady, sorry, Jill, who believe in LGBTQ+ Americans who believe in all of us. So it was an honor and a pleasure to do it with Pete out on the trail, spreading that hope and that dignity for every single person who is just waiting for this country to truly be a beacon of hope and progress and inclusion. So to everyone on this call who boosted us, who buoyed us, who encouraged us, who pushed us, sometimes in good ways and sometimes in hard ways, we knew we had to get this moment right. And I really hope that we made you all proud, and it was a pleasure representing you on the trail.
And just the beginning. I mean, look, I know, again, we think of this moment so much in terms of just the dire condition our country's in, but the other way I like to think about it is what could be possible in the next 10 years. I mean, if 10 years ago, marriage equality was not the law of the land for most people, it was impossible for people to serve openly. That was just 10 years ago. Think of what 2030 might be like if we get this right. And that's what I'm excited for. We know what needs to happen as far as the vice president's agenda for LGBTQ+ equality, protecting our community from discrimination, supporting LGBTQ+ youth, protecting individuals from violence and dealing with that epidemic of violence, especially against trans women of color, making sure healthcare is available to all, ensuring that there's fair treatment in the criminal justice system, getting the data that we need to even be able to adequately support our LGBTQ+ community. And one other thing I'm looking forward to as you see what's going on around the world, not just backsliding in democracy, but horrible violence and repression of the LGBTQ+ community, is to once again have a president who understands that part of America's role in the world is to stand up for universal values. And yes, that means defending LGBTQ+ equality around the world. But we can only do that abroad for practicing what we preach at home. Same as it is with democracy or any other issue. Same as it is with climate. All these things where lives are at stake in the future. And this is our chance. So I really wish that we were gathering in person. I know this would have been one of the most exciting and vibrant in-person caucus meetings, but just the same in the virtual fashion. I know some of the most exciting and fun to be around and determined people in the party are represented in this caucus. So, accept some warm virtual hugs from us here in South Bend. We're so thrilled to be with you. And
from Buddy and Truman, they're both snoring off camera. I was hoping that you all couldn't hear them, but they're happy to have us home. I was sad that we aren't in person, but I mean, doing the Zooms in drawstring shorts, really. I mean, what a bonus, you know.
Yeah, we're definitely prioritizing comfort. It's good to kind of be able to be around the world at once, right? And that's how our community is.
It's good to have you home.
I see that Mayor Garcia is going to join us soon. Great to see fellow mayor, and I know you're going to have a lot of wisdom for us too. So I'll wrap up. I just want to mention one other thing. Sometimes the way politics works, folks forget that this is about personal life. This is about everyday life. They talk about it like it's about a scoreboard. I think the LGBTQ community is uniquely able to remind everybody, because our lives, our very marriages, our households, the existence of our families depends on political decisions and political courage. We have a unique place in this party and in this country to remind everybody what's at stake. I know that you take that to heart. It's one of the reasons I'm proud to stand with you. And let's give ourselves a lot to celebrate in November. Thanks for everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Pete and Chaston. I want to thank you so much for shattering yet another glass ceiling. It's so important to all of us to see that people in our community can do anything. I'm very honored to next introduce a good friend of mine, Mayor Robert Garcia of Long Beach. Robert is an educator and the mayor of the city of Long Beach, which, like my home city, West Hollywood, is often overshadowed by the neighbor next door, the city of Los Angeles. But Long Beach is a tremendous city in its own right. Robert has a lot in common with my spouse, Peter. They're both alums of USC. Robert got his EDD at the Long Beach State University, which is where my spouse, Peter, teaches. And I want to really point out that Robert is so accomplished. He's on the LA Metro board. He is a leader in our LGBT community here in California. And we are very privileged to hear from him now. So, Mayor Garcia.
Well, thank you, Lawrence. And hey, everybody. Good to see everyone. Thank you for all of your incredible leadership. Just obviously being a part of the caucus virtually this year is different, but it's also an exciting opportunity to reach that many more people. Obviously, amazing remarks by Mayor Pete and Chaston, heroes, of course, in our LGBTQ movement and making history across the country, of course, and of course not really the world. I mean, I've heard people everywhere talk about that race, so it's great to get some insight and to hear from everybody as well. So it's good to be with you guys. I just have a few just remarks. The first thing I just want to say is to the caucus leadership, thank you for always bringing everyone together at our conventions, even when it's virtual. This has been different to organize, but we're excited to fight for our rights. We are here to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, President and Vice President of the United States. That is the most important thing. I want to start just by reminding us of the historic nature of this ticket, the most pro-LGBTQ ticket in the history of the United States and in our party. You have Vice President Biden, who, of course, as we've all been discussing, came out in favor of marriage equality and really nudged President Obama at the time to get there. And then, of course, we have Kamala Harris, who I wanted to start by just spending a little time on. So I'm from California, and us Californians could not be more proud of our home state senator. And people should know that what we have in Senator Harris and the next vice president of the United States is someone that is not only going to break barriers as a woman of color, but someone that has been with us in this fight for a long time. It is part of her DNA and part of her core. Some of us that are here as part of this caucus will remember back in 2004. In 2004, me personally, I was closeted. I was a closeted young man trying to figure myself out, still unsure of who I was and what my own values were. But I remember watching the television and seeing then San Francisco DA Kamala Harris marrying gay couples in San Francisco and on the steps of City Hall. And if you think about that moment, there were two individuals that really stood out. One was Kamala Harris, and the other, of course, was our now Governor Gavin Newsom, who were out front of marrying LGBTQ couples when it was unpopular. In fact, back in 2004, the party, many in the party shunned that moment because they felt it had gone too far. But Kamala stepped forward. She broke barriers, and her career continued. And as DA, we've all kind of heard about her record. One where she really uplifted LGBTQ folks, which I think is really important to note. Created special units within the department. We then, of course, saw her go to become AG, where she chose, of course, definitively to not defend Prop 8, which started a chain reaction of events, which, of course, led us to that Supreme Court decision that was so impactful for us, and myself included. I got married to my partner of 10 years because we were allowed to marry, and this country uplifted all of our rights, and we're grateful for that. And then, of course, as a senator, where she is currently, she's been our friend and supporter. And so as a Californian, I just want to share that she is the real deal. She is a true ally to our community, and we're just excited to have her. And we know that Vice President Biden has nothing to prove with our community. He has been there for us and continues to speak out. And so we should be proud of that. The other thing to remember as LGBTQ plus people is what's at stake in the election. A lot of us, even within our own community, have privilege, and we have to look at who we're fighting for in this election. As supporters of members of our trans community, our trans brothers and sisters, all our trans folks that are within our community, they need our support in this election. We got to fight for them. When you see what's happening right now as it relates to what's happening to them within healthcare, discrimination in the military, in housing, at every level of government, the Trump administration is rolling back rights. And it goes beyond, of course, the trans community, but it is especially affecting them. And so for all of us, we have to stand up and do better. We have to remember that our community is diverse, and we all need to be there for each other in any way that we can. I encourage us to get involved in the convention. As someone that had a chance to travel to Iowa and Nevada to represent both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, the one thing that I heard from gay folks, LGBTQ folks across the country is they want to be heard. They want our voices on the national stage. They want our voices at the table, and we have an opportunity in this election to work with organizations at the grassroots level and at the national level, like the Victory Fund, like HRC, like Honor PAC in California, which supports LGBTQ plus Latinx candidates, and really ask of the administration to really represent us at the cabinet level and to support members of Congress, mayors, commissioners all across the country. So we have a lot of work to do. It's an honor to be with you guys tonight. Tonight, I'll be joining 16 other Americans from across the country in our keynote address for the convention. It's going to be a very unique and different keynote, but there are also 3 LGBTQ members of our community that are doing that keynote tonight. So I'm honored to join them and happy to join all of you guys here today. And just thank you for being here. Continue to get involved, and let's keep fighting and win in November. The future of our country and our rights are at stake. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We look forward to hearing you tonight. By blocking the ability of transgender individuals to serve our country openly in the military, by denying Americans equal access to healthcare because they're trans, by proposing to allow federally funded homeless shelters to turn away transgender people, the Trump administration demonstrates its callousness and its single-minded desire to undo the progress of the Obama-Biden administration on the backs of our trans siblings. That's why I'm so proud to introduce this panel and our two distinguished panelists. The first is a dear friend and colleague on the DNC from the LGBT Caucus, Dr. Marissa Richmond. Dr. Richmond is a professor of women's and gender studies at Middle Tennessee State University. She's a transgender woman and activist. She was the first president of the Tennessee Transgender Political Coalition, and her activism is an inspiration to me, and I know to all the rest of our members of our caucus. So welcome to you, Marissa. Second, we're honored to be joined by nationally recognized leader in the Safe Schools movement, Shannon Cuttle. Shannon founded the Safe Schools Action Network and the New Jersey Safe Schools Coalition. In 2018, they were elected to serve on the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education in Essex County, New Jersey. They currently serve as the first vice president of that board. Please join me in welcoming the very accomplished Shannon Cuttle. And with that, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. We're here. We've got a slide presentation coming, and we're just waiting for that to get loaded. Okay, here we go. We're here today to present the Jane Fee Award. Jane Fee was the first openly transgender delegate from the state of Minnesota back in 2000. Jane is a veteran of World War II, was instrumental in helping pass the transgender non-discrimination ordinance in her home city of Minneapolis, one of the first cities in the country to have a fully inclusive non-discrimination ordinance. And then in 1993, helped steer through the very first transgender inclusive non-discrimination law at the state level in her home state of Minnesota. And so the transgender delegates of 2004 formed the Jane Fee Award to honor somebody within the Democratic Party at each Democratic National Convention who was instrumental in fighting for transgender inclusion and transgender equality. And they named this award in honor of Jane, who, by the way, is still alive, but is in poor health and is not able to be with us today. So if we could then get the second slide. This, normally, when we are together at the convention, we call up all of the transgender delegates on stage to show who we are and that we're part of the convention. Obviously, we're not able to do that since we're not all in Milwaukee. However, we do want to introduce the members of the transgender delegation, transgender and gender nonconforming delegation of 2020. So we put together this collage of smiling headshots. And so I'd just like to quickly introduce everybody. On the top row, starting on the left, we have Justin Neiman from North Carolina, Wendy Ella May of North Carolina, Alec Momeni Dupree of New Hampshire, Jean Smith of Indiana, Emily Ann Ward of California, Nathan Broomer of Florida, Mara Glupka of Minnesota, Brenda Churchill of Vermont, Council Member Rosemary Ketchum of West Virginia, one of our elected officials, and Michelle Reicher of Oregon. In the middle row, again starting on the left, we have Dejalyn Alvarez of Pennsylvania, Chanel Haley of Georgia, Council Member Veronica Pejril of Indiana, and Veronica is the one who put together this collage for us. Megan Stabler of Texas, a member of the Platform Committee this year, Shannon Cuttle, Jay Moyer of Kansas, Marissa Richmond in Tennessee, that's me, Alfred Twu of California, who holds the distinction of becoming our very first AAPI delegate in the Trans Caucus, and then Melissa Schuen Mallory, also of California. Then on the bottom row, we have Jason Boxer of California, Council Member Lisa Middleton of California, Brianna Westbrook of Arizona, Charlotte Clymer of the District of Columbia, David Senseman of Minnesota, Leslie Phillips of Massachusetts, Narissa Jimenez Petchumras of North Carolina, Monica Nemeth, who is a member of the District of Columbia Advisory Neighborhood Commission, Jose Caballero of California, and then our longest serving member, Melissa Scalars of New York, who was here in her 5th consecutive convention. Also not pictured is Nick Harris of Florida, Mason Armstrong of Idaho, Colin Platt of North Carolina, and we want to give a shout out to last night's speaker, Delegate Danica Rome of Virginia. Next slide, please. The first Jane Fee Award was given in 2004 by the transgender delegates that year, and that recipient was Scott Safier of Pennsylvania. I searched hard for a picture from 2008. We couldn't find one, but that winner was Rick Stafford from Jane's home state of Minnesota. In 2012, the recipient was Brian Bond of Missouri. And then in 2016, we gave 2 Jane Fee Awards, the first to Congressman Mike Honda of California, and the second one to Chairman Ray Buckley of New Hampshire. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague. Shannon Cuttle, as you heard earlier, is a member of the South Orange Maplewood School Board in New Jersey and holds the distinction this year of becoming the very first elected official to become a transgender delegate. And this year is one of our 6 elected officials serving as a transgender delegate. So Shannon, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Richmond, and thank you to the chairman and our esteemed colleagues and elected officials joining us here today on this momentous occasion for our caucus meeting. I would like to go to the next slide, please. It is my esteemed and incredible honor to introduce the Jane Fee Award 2020 recipient, New Jersey's very own Barbara Babs Casper Sipperstein. Babs Sipperstein was a dedicated advocate and longtime advocate for the transgender community and the greater LGBTQ+ community across the country and across the state of New Jersey. Next slide, please. Babs Sipperstein was New Jersey's first transgender delegate to the Democratic National Convention. Babs became the first openly transgender member of the Democratic National Committee in 2009 and served on the executive committee of the Democratic National Committee from 2011 through 2017. Babs also served as deputy vice chair of the New Jersey Democratic State Committee, vice president of the bipartisan Women's Political Caucus of New Jersey, the political director of Gender Rights Advocacy Association of New Jersey, president of the New Jersey Stonewall Democrats, co-chair of the National Stonewall Democrats Federal PAC Board, vice chair of Garden State Equality, and as a member of the New Jersey Civil Union Review Commission. Babs was also a small business owner and a veteran. Next slide, please. Babs is also the namesake of the groundbreaking, historic New Jersey Babs-Sipperstein law that Governor Murphy signed into law in 2019 that allows transgender persons the option to self-identify their gender on their birth certificate, as she worked tirelessly as a passionate champion for gender equity, LGBTQ+ persons and transgender civil rights, and ensuring that the transgender community had a seat at the table in her work and advocacy, helping move forward transgender rights on the national, state, and local levels. Babs was instrumental working with other leaders to help forge the DNC Transgender Caucus and LGBT Caucus, and Babs was a force that was able to galvanize both sides of the aisle, always working to ensure transgender and LGBTQ+ rights. During her life, she touched so many lives in so many ways. On a personal note, Babs was a dear friend, mentor, and colleague to me as we championed the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights, supporting inclusive, safer schools, inclusive education curriculum, the New Jersey ban on reparative therapy, ending Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and supporting marriage equality. When I was thinking of running for office, Babs was the first person who encouraged me to do it. And on election night, she was the first person to call me to say, "We did it." We stand on the shoulders of those that come before us, and I'm here with you today as an honor to serve as a New Jersey Biden delegate and one of New Jersey's first transgender elected official because of the work and the many strides that Babs has made on the local, state, and national level and in our history. I know that I stand on Babs' shoulders, helping to build the next rung in the ladder to help lift up the next generation of transgender and LGBTQ+ leaders and advocates. Her legacy continues as the next generation of New Jersey transgender youth leaders are already blazing trails and creating change inspired by Babs' actions and advocacy, such as Rebecca Bresenhoff and New Jersey's own Chris Rios. Her legacy lives on in our youth and our next generation. Now, I would like to share a few words from Babs' family on this honor. On behalf of the entire Sipperstein family, I would like to thank the DNC for this amazing tribute. Babs would be truly touched and honored to see all of you here fighting the good fight. It makes our entire family so proud to see how Babs inspired so many and made such a lasting impact on the country's LGBTQ community. Thank you. On behalf of Babs' family, Babs' daughter, Jana Sipperstein.
Thank you, Shannon. At this point, we're going to have a panel to continue the theme of fighting for trans rights. We're going to have a panel looking at trans youth issues. We've been watching state legislatures, especially here in the South, targeting trans youth for trying to deny them access to health care, education, and even access to the right to play sports, although needless to say, the mishandling of the coronavirus by the current administration is affecting a lot of people's ability to play sports, but they've been particularly transphobic in schools. And so I'd like to introduce the moderator of the panel, who will then introduce the panelists. Our moderator is a good old friend, Diego Sanchez. Diego was a senior policy advisor to Congressman Barney Frank until Congressman Frank's retirement in 2013. And in the process, Diego made history, becoming the first openly transgender person to work as a senior legislative staff member on Capitol Hill. He testified before Congress in the historic transgender discrimination hearing in 2008, and that year was appointed as the first openly transgender person to serve on the DNC platform committee. He has served our community in many roles and has won many awards and honors for his excellent work. More recently, of course, he's been working as the policy director for PFLAG, one of the most important organizations for our community. So at this point in time, it is my great honor, my great pleasure to introduce my dear old friend, Diego Sanchez. And Diego, please introduce us to your panelists, and we all look forward to hearing what you all have to say.
To raising up transgender youth and young adults, resilient and relevant, fierce and fighting. It's my great honor and pleasure to have a conversation today with two amazing champions who have been and who have led transgender and non-binary youth and young adults, building a better tomorrow. While trans and non-binary people of color have become a target for intended harm by the current administration, by rolling back civil and humane rights, and by permitting and promoting danger and harm to the free-walking, detained, and incarcerated trans and non-binary people among us. We stand with our backs braced and our shoulders squared, and we have the prospect of hope. The Obama-Biden administration gave us the oxygen on the path to be treated as equal humans that we are, with a shorter to-do list of things left to bring us closer to full equality. Federal laws have brought us light. We have to begin by calling out the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, the first federal bill ever to explicitly include transgender people, and I was there for the signing of that bill into law. Hate crimes and murders affect Black trans women more than anyone in our community. And we've already approaching 30 Black trans women murdered that are reported, not just that occurred, but that are reported. And we are not yet done with the summer. Obama-Biden also gave us the second federal bill to explicitly include transgender people, the Violence Against Women Act, which includes transgender women as it protects all women. And my friend Maura Kiesling was there for the signing of that bill into law. And they delivered the Affordable Care Act, including LGBTQ people, to be included in non-discrimination protections under Section 1557. With the Biden-Harris administration in our sights, God willing, as the vice president likes to say, we can look forward to the most pro-equality, inclusive LGBTQ set of policies and practices, and yes, including transgender and non-binary people, that our nation has ever known, especially given Vice President Biden's long history of fighting for the LGBTQ community. So everyone, request your ballots now if you've not, and vote and email it back immediately. Our nation has known a president in the past whose inability to say one word, AIDS, cost us nearly a generation of our own with needless death. If in Joe Biden, we will have a president whose past ability to say one word, marriage, made the LGBT community able to love who they love without penalty and with pride. We know that the Biden-Harris administration would fight to bring us all full non-discrimination in the Equality Act, healthcare without exclusion for pre-existing conditions, open military service for trans people, to complete the meaning of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and not ignore the destructive, horrific murders of our Black trans women, our sisters, no matter where they lived. We would have a partner in building safety in our schools for our kids, an equal shot at what their peers receive for our youth and young adults, respectful and safe care for our seniors, and data collection for everyone so we know how we're doing and where we can go to document the needs for support. So let's go to our panel. I'd like to read their bios, and then we'll open with a poem, an incredible poem by Linda Labasia. So for bios, we first have Jay Mai, pronouns they, them. Jay Mai is a Black Vietnamese transgender non-binary royalty, currently living out their ever-evolving truths in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Entering into their last year of divinity school, Jay Mai studies at the intersections of decolonial Black, trans, queer liberation theologies. A licensed minister, community organizer, and lover of all things Black, trans, queer, and ratchet, Jay Mai believes that the bodies and lived experiences of Black, trans, and GNC folks contain the blueprints to knowing and being in loving relationship with the divine. They just want to flourish, love on their communities, and do hood rat shit with their friends. Linda Labasia is a multidisciplinary artist. She is a teacher, a curator from the Boogie Down Bronx of New York. Her work explores the complexities of living as a transgender woman of color in today's America. With origins in both Black America and the English-Spanish-speaking Caribbean, Linda's transnational experience of living at the intersection of embodied social and national borders hones in on the critiques of heterogenomic power. She was born out of the iconic House of Labasia in the underground New York City Vogue ballroom scene, and today, Linda Labasia is the mother of the New York City House of Labasia. Now, please listen to a poem by Linda Labasia.
This poem is titled, I Have Crossed the Atlantic. This piece was written in response to the Carol Walker exhibit at the Tate Modern in London. I was invited there December 2019 to present this work and to host an event in response to this very large exhibit, this large sculpture, Fons Americanus by Carol Walker, in tribute to the Atlantic slave trade. Am I more beautiful now that you have seen me dance, seen me prance and lay and give you drama and dismay, host, accommodate, entertain, give you my time and energy for a fee? Did I do something you liked? Do you like something I said? Did I give you something you need? Do you think you understand me better? Do you feel sorry for me? Do you feel pity? I wonder often, what if I stop moving, stop living, stop breathing? Would I stop grooving, stop existing, stop feeding? Would I be remembered, still, slain, still, forgotten, still, left to rot in some remote place like garbage? How sad. I have crossed the Atlantic to walk in the shoes my ancestors never had, to feel their footsteps in the clothes they didn't possess. I have crossed the Atlantic to wear layers, to warm the spirits left cold, shipwrecked, diseased, battered, and bloody, to reclaim the money they were sold for, to retrace the steps of my ancestors' wildest dreams, to reverse time, to cross waters backwards, to a land I've never seen. I've crossed the Atlantic to further discover me, to dig deeper into what has always called me there. Elton John, The Lion King, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? My Antiguan mother's love for the Beatles, Harry Potter, Amy Winehouse's whole career, God, and the Spice Girls. I collected those stickers in second grade. Secret Diary of a Call Girl, that Showtime special, taught me everything I needed to know about being a sex worker there in the UK. But those were white ideals passed down to me by television and media. So today, I'm here for Carol Walker, for art, and to walk in the protection of my ancestors, the protection they never had, to be glad for the privilege to experience this other half of the world, even if I feel alone. I am the daughter of waters my mother gave birth to. Before she prayed the predicted daughter inside her away with that sentero, I was the daughter of Yamaya. I am the before, I will be the after. I've spent my whole life doing for others, working for others, feeding others, watering others, that now I must water me. They call them monuments because they are monumental. And this moment in my life, in our lives, feels so monumental. It gives me hope for what the future can be. Maybe I will live to see a monument of a woman like me. The way I saw Stonewall 50, hopefully that statue is Marsha P. I have crossed the Atlantic to let past generations speak. Those spirits that have woven, have opened and chosen me to usher in as an agent of change, to be perceived a monster, a demon, a fallen angel off the page. Here is where I hope for a career sweet and soft as Corinne Bailey Rae, as deep and vast and vulnerable as the fabulous Sade. May this moment in history manifest more monuments like these to replace the old ones that no one really cares to see anymore. May their emergence and long overdue establishment and existence remind everyone of our terrible, ugly, and hurtful Black world history. For every piece that's fragmented, trauma-induced into a mystery, left to the imagination, interpretation, undocumented secretly, may we archive another Black hymnary. My delivery will not be kind. I have crossed the Atlantic and have yet to find peace. I speak for the ancestors that never could speak. I speak for the ancestors that could only scream or weep. I weep for the ancestors that have just cried themselves silently to sleep. Bodies on bodies, murder on murder, genocide on genocide. My Black trans life is a miracle to breathe. My Black trans life is a wonder to see. So no, I will not shuck and jive. I will not entertain. I will release. I will unleash without refrain, so that even if you forget my words, you damn sure won't forget my name. You will remember me. I will run my Black ass mouth until the day stillness has come to visit, and maybe next I'll cross the Pacific. For I have crossed the Atlantic alone without a boyfriend or a spouse to find a glimmer of a lighthouse, a spark of hope. I journey alone to find a new home away from toxicity and family, corruption and government, fast paces and no aces, just too many troubled jacks. The artist in me says I'm a New Yorker, but I've never felt American. I don't know the Pledge of Allegiance. Those are not my systems, the way that is not my president. Call me New Eurekan. My mother's Antiguan, but first and foremost, I am Black. I'm a Black transgender woman. I manipulate sands of masculinity with waves of the future feminist movement. My presence requires a level of care and understanding that most don't know. Hell, I cross oceans alone. I've crossed the Atlantic in fear. No family here, no one I know, no friends, no enemies. I think, will I be targeted here? What are my chances? Will someone help me? Will someone help me? Are you my friend? Can I find a home in you? Do you feel sorry for me? Do you feel sorry for me? Do you pity me? Am I human too? Where can I rest? Where can I rest? Where can I rest in peace? Where is it safe? Where do I belong? I've crossed the Atlantic to feel spirits lost. I've crossed the Atlantic to respond to this call. I have crossed the Atlantic to stand for the many who never had a chance to even crawl, to turn time forward, across water backward, to progress, create, and remember history with you all. I hope and wish and pray that I soon find somewhere I belong. Thank you.
So magnificent. Thank you so much, Linda. And now the panel. So powerful. I had to share. I had to make sure y'all got to experience that with us. Linda, I wanted to ask you a little about how did you find and grow up in the House of Labasia? And what are you seeing today in Black and multiracial, multicultural trans youth that you care for and bring up now that you find the same or different than when you were first introduced to the House of Labasia?
When I say that I was brought up in the House of Labasia, what I mean is that's where my transition began. And it was around that time that I really felt like I was coming into myself as a young artist, as just a young person trying to figure out, what's going on in the world. I think that the challenges that young people are dealing with today are so much more different because we're in a pandemic. And I think a lot of young people are not even sure what direction to go in. They're not even sure, what's still possible. And I think it's more than frayed hope. I think it's an adjustment. I think it's a sharp, a lot of sharp changes, you know, to the way that people are used to doing things, the way young people are used to receiving services or receiving help. That's, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Jay Mai, talk to us a little about how you decided to pursue divinity school, and what are you discovering in your faith pursuits that you might have missed had you chosen another path for fulfillment and growth?
So going to divinity school for me was honestly just a survival mechanism. I seek stability as a Black trans via person in this world. And so like divinity school was like the next stable step for me. And I'm fucking exhausted of having to survive and having to choose my commitment to survival over my commitment to my own flourishing. Something that I would have missed if I chose a different path is that some of the holiest people and the people who most resemble what God looks like to me are Black trans folks, and in particular Black trans women. And I wouldn't have figured that out if it wasn't for div school. And I mean, I would have figured it out, but it just helps to know that God looks like Black trans women to me. And honestly, like, we know that the most vulnerable and unprotected people in America are Black trans women. And honestly, this party isn't doing enough to protect them. It's not doing enough to like really be upfront in the ways in which it has failed Black trans women. And so if you aren't doing anything to tangibly support Black trans women right now, you need to get your shit together and do the fucking work, or move the fuck out of the way so that people who are doing the work can give our roses to our sisters while they're still here.
Thank you so much. Next point is for Linda and Jay, for both of you, Linda Labasia and Jay Mai. What kinds of questions do our Black, Brown, API, Native, or multi-race, trans, and non-binary youth ask you that remind you of what you asked when you were their age? And what are they asking you that you never thought of?
I think that the questions that I heard Black, trans, and non-binary youth ask me is just, and things I'm just like starting to like just realize for myself, is why I can't dream bigger for myself. Why can't folks imagine a world without the cops? Why can't folks imagine a world without prisons? Why can't people expand their imaginations to include community care, to include an abolitionist future? And I'm talking about like for real abolition, not just watered down DNC version of abolition. We're talking about abolishing the police. We're talking about abolishing ICE. We're talking about abolishing prisons. And we need folks to dream bigger, because your fear of losing power and your privilege is holding all of us back from freedom. And your desire to be a savior and to toe party lines is literally killing Black trans women. So quit the shit out. It's not cute. That is what young, non-binary, Black, non-binary, and trans youth are asking me. And that's a question that I'm asking for myself right now.
Thank you so much for that informative and courageous response. Linda, would you like to take that question as well?
Sure, absolutely. I think, questions that really stick out for me in my experience working with young people here in New York City, where we experience the highest volume of youth homelessness, and that population is almost half all LGBT identified. Just for folks to be aware, is what am I supposed to do? I think our youth and I think our people, LGBT people, are consistently discriminated against, are consistently judged, are consistently ridiculed, and made to feel shamed, and are pushed out of opportunities, whether it be scholarships, whether it be employment, whether it be housing. And at this point, I think we've reached a moment where there's so much more visibility, right? And this is great, right? This is awesome that we can see this kind of diversity in media. However, I think that there's a conversation not being had to bridge between communities, right? To essentially stop the violence that is happening. And I think it's all just a lack of resources. You know, when we're talking about defunding the police, we're talking about pouring back into the community. We're talking about community centers. We're talking about the importance of intergenerational communities. You know, you're talking about the LGBT community. I know, coming from the House of Labasia, you know, it was very difficult for us, you know, coming in. I came in 2011, and our leaders were coming out of very rough times, having lost many people to the AIDS epidemic, you know, having lost many people to incarceration, having lost people to violence, to it, you know, to mental health. You know, like these are real issues that have affected communities of color for generations. I visited Seneca Village recently and was even more shocked by that history. It just, you know, it goes on.
Thank you so much. So, Linda, you just mentioned that 50% of the youth that you're stumbling on, that there's about 50% LGBTQ. We know the national number, and it's definitely undercounted, is 40% are LGBTQ of homeless youth. And we know that many of those are trans or gender non-binary. Under the current administration, shelters are permitted and practically invited to turn away trans people. And there remains barriers for adoption and foster care that the Equality Act and Every Child Deserves a Family, which is John Lewis's bill, would address. If you could talk right now with Vice President Biden and Senator Harris, what would you ask of them to best support trans and non-binary youth of color? Jay, would you like to take that first?
Linda, do you want to go first? Okay. So I would, if I could talk to VP Biden and Senator Harris right now, I would tell them to open their purse, to open the DNC's purse, and to give hard cash money or Cash App, Venmo, whatever, Black, trans, non-binary youth right now, because we cannot vote if we're struggling to survive. We cannot focus on any of these issues if we're struggling to feed ourselves, if we're struggling to house ourselves, if we're trying to figure out how we're going to live the next day, if there's going to be breath in our lungs the next day. Open your purse, because I'm tired of seeing people like trans, non-binary youth having to use GoFundMes and Cash Apps and Venmos to sustain themselves. That is freaking ridiculous. And so they need to open up the purse, open up your bag, and give money where money is much needed, because we can't do shit if we can't live.
Very well said. Let's look at the next question, if we would. How can we raise, how can we support, how can we cultivate the fierce, the resilient, and the fighting trans and GNC non-binary youth in our own communities? I think, Jay, you just talked about making sure that cash is opened up. I know that young people come to you, and what do you do in a way to lift up, to celebrate their resilience, or what do you tell them to do?
I think that's the issue, is that what do you tell these young people to do, when they're being followed into whatever few service providers they can actually seek by men that want to use them for sexual favors, like what do you tell TGNC people that are experiencing discrimination at work, and not being able to advance or losing their job? Like, what do you tell people to do when there are no more housing options for homeless youth? I think I would say that there needs to be support provided to communities of color. I think that it needs to be recognized how important the innovation and the usefulness of diversity can really enrich a lot of our systems, right? When we're actually working collectively toward a common goal, because I think, many people have a common goal. I just think that, there's a lot of etiquette and expectation around how we all need to go about doing it. And I think it's just time to throw it away and just allow what we're seeing now is an allowance of accessibility, in the presence of this virus, the openness to consider, other people, in our space and with each other, and I think there's a power to that we have to hone in on. I don't know if that answered the question.
Oh, you did. I mean, I think you answered it even with the first line, which is that is the question. What do we say? Jay, we've got about 30 seconds. Is there anything you'd like to do to close?
I would just say support LGBTQ plus organizations that actually center like Black, trans, and POC people. Because the big mainstream ones don't, to be honest. And then also people are still protesting out here in these streets. People have been continuously protesting every single day. And I can guarantee you that they're led by Black trans youth. So listen to them, let them lead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jay Mai, Linda Labasia. Thank you so much.